Dead meme.
Well, you've just been dropped into the world of Valheim, and basically you start with very little, similar to a Minecraft start. You have almost nothing. Well, in Minecraft you have nothing. What should you be doing? Well, of course you can get advice from the only handful of NPCs that exist, but I'm just going to briefly summarize and go over some things that you should be doing when you first drop into the world. So, you should touch this. It'll basically place the first boss on your map. You can access your map by pushing N. You can roll in and out, all your typical good stuff. But the first thing you really need is, since you're unable to extract resources from the environment, you're going to need to find branches and stones. And as you can see, almost immediately, we unlock various crafting recipes. And more resources we can extract without tools, raspberries. So food is a very large component of the game, but we're going to cover that momentarily. What we should be working on first is just roaming around. Oh, perfect. Is running around and collecting a few sticks and stones to make the first tool. And of course, if you run and jump and do things like this to improve your skill level, as you can see, there are various skill levels. There are many more, but training them now, in between all the jobs you're going to do, it's a good plan. But I'll be back when I've gathered a few sticks and stones, and I'll show you the next step. So you've gathered some sticks and stones. You're being mindful of other things you could harvest, like raspberries or mushrooms. You can find them on the ground. So while we're here, you hit tab to access this menu. If you go down here, you can see these are all the things that are available to craft, and we can make a stone axe relatively early. Pretty important tool in order to begin doing any sort of major resource extraction. You could cut down a big tree. I don't recommend it. It takes a fair bit of time. And of course, some wildlife will be very tough for you to have any accessibility to kill at this point. So, you know, if you come across a deer and you can't catch it, don't stress. It's something we'll cover in a bit. But I'm going to be... Actually, let's talk about food. So as you notice, I have 32 health. If you look in the bottom left here, this shows me the meals I have eaten. You can have 3 active food items at a time. So I've got this raspberry active. It primarily provides additional stamina, which allows you to perform tasks without getting tired. And of course, we can eat this mushroom to gain a little bit more. It'll increase the maximum health and a little bit of my stamina. So stamina is in the bottom middle, and it's dropping as I run around or perform various tasks. Every meal you eat must be unique. You cannot eat 3 raspberries and get the benefits. So eventually, it's a strategy we deal with later on of what meals to choose for battle. But for the most part, I'll be back when we're ready to cover the next step. So you finally acquired enough material to build your axe and your hammer. I do kind of recommend it in that order. The axe will allow you to extract more resources out of the world and give you a medium or a bare minimum level of defense. So with the axe, of course, you know, we can cut down some trees and get some wood. It'll allow us to supply us with the crafting materials needed in order to build the crafting station. So you would kind of assume that, you know, just like Minecraft, you would just basically put it down. You would be able to access it and use it, but you cannot, because it requires a shelter above it. So another thing to keep in mind is the player is unable to build structures such as housing or walls and things like that without actually providing a crafting table. So that's why you've built the hammer, and of course you access this with tab. So I'm just going to knock down a couple of trees, get a little bit of wood to show you what I mean, like how you can access this. And as you can see, because we built the crafting station, a ridiculous amount of things have unlocked to us, but we'll come back to that. So I've got the opportunity to kind of show combat to you. If you hold down right click, you can kind of enter a defensive stance. You can block an attack. These enemies are rather cowardly and may not attack you, but if you time your block right, you can stun them. And by left clicking with the axe in hand, you'll take some swings, right? And I'm pretty sure you guys have been gaming long enough to know what happened there, right? We got some critical hits because we blocked an attack or we parried. So now that that's been covered, we're going to take our hammer out, because we want to cover building some buildings. So in order to make this guy work, you got to get the hammer as your active button. So I've thrown it in 8 there. And you could right click and select what you would like to build. And in the bottom, it's showing you the resource costs, of course, right? So if we just throw a little really pseudo structural roof on here, we can actually begin crafting. Now, I'm not certain why they've chosen to go this route, that you have to enclose these stations, but keep in mind, any building that's not, or anything that's left out that's not sheltered, like workstations, like degrade, they take damage from the weather. So it's just another thing to keep in mind. This button here is very important. You can repair your gear. There is some restrictions and whatnot, but that's not, we're not going to get too deep into that. Anything that you're building at this point, you can repair here. So I'm going to quickly just throw together a very rudimentary structure. It's going to be very ugly, but it's going to get a job done for us. And I'm just selecting the roofs, and I'm using the tree as a support. And as you can see, there's different colors for support. That's not... We're not going to get too deep into structure in this one. I'm pretty sure you can figure out on your own. Like, you know, if you make a ridiculous structure, it's not going to stand. I'm sure you don't need to be babysat through that. But we're just going to make a rudimentary structure. And I'll come back with some stone, and I'll show you what the purpose of this is. All right, with enough stone and wood, we can finally put down the campfire. And in the furniture tab, we can throw down a bed. So at nighttime, get out of here, we're talking. At nighttime, you'll be able to rest in here, and you'll be able to sleep through the night. It is one of those typical tropes where stuff that comes out at night is a bit more dangerous, especially at the beginning of the game. Now, I'd like to direct your attention to the top right. There are 3 icons up there. One of them is comfort, one of them says you're sheltered, and one of them says you're near a campfire. Basically, because I'm in this rudimentary shelter, I'm resting. And I have a campfire to keep me warm, and the shelter lets me know that this space is considered shelter. Now, a 4th buff has appeared. That is rested. So basically, if you are rested, your stamina will regenerate faster and deplete slower. So it is crucial for the vast majority of things such as boss battles and things like that in order to succeed is to have rested. Now, we're not going to get too deep into making this huge because we're just talking about the beginning of the game. But for the most part, this bed, along with this campfire, in a sheltered environment is giving me a comfort of 4, which is approximately 11-minute buff. To keep in mind, you can rest near your campfire. You can place these outside and get a comfort of 1. Not amazing, but it's an option available to you. So, one thing to keep in mind, you want to cook any meat, because I have managed to kill a boar. They're aggressive, they'll come for you. They're easy to beat though, so we'll just pop that on there, and we have to wait for it to cook. So you're unable to pull it off until it reaches its next state. But if you leave it there, it'll burn. It'll turn into charcoal, which isn't a total loss. Charcoal has its uses, especially when you get to the point where you're going to smelt down some metal. But for the most part, I think that covers it. Just if you throw something on just like that, be ready to care for it, right? So while we're here, let's look at food. So food has, or at least at this point, there are other colors, but there's a yellow fork. Excuse me. There's a yellow fork, the white fork, and the red fork. The white fork is a combination of the 2 stats of health and stamina. Yellow gives more stamina, and red gives more meat. Or not meat, more health, which is typically a meat product. So there we go. So I've eaten 3 different types of food. So I have a larger maximum stamina, and health because of the 3 meals I've chosen to eat. And of course, as you progress through the game, that's actually one of the largest forms of progression available to you. So before we get too far, with your hammer in hand, you can select this button and you can repair a structure that has been damaged by yourself or anything else that's out there. You just left click on it. You can middle mouse button. You probably saw me do this before. You can disassemble things. You get back the full material cost, assuming you have no mods or anything like that installed. With all of that covered, you pretty much have the beginnings of what you need to explore Valheim. I do recommend also that as you find useful places like this, I didn't harvest it right away. You push M, you take one of these icons, and you can drop it on the map. Bushes. So now I'll remember to come back here and check for these enormous amount of berry bushes that have spawned in, and they'll continue to provide resources as long as they aren't destroyed or destroyed or damaged by the NPC. So I'll show you what I mean. You can ruin this bush and it's gone forever. So not the end of the world. There's a lot of raspberries out there, but just keep that in mind. You don't want to intentionally destroy your the resources you're relying on at the beginning of the game. So what I'm going to briefly do is, because when you look at your crafting station here, you're going to get all of the recipes. They're going to ask you for flint and leather scraps and things like that. I'm going to show you where to look for some of this stuff, and then we're probably going to call it there. And that's a perfect timing. There's a boar. They're typically afraid of fire, so if you are being harassed, that's a method available to you. But they're easy to kill, so we'll just murder him. There we go. This is where your leather scraps come from. You'll need this to produce clothing and certain tools. Now we'll move on. Alright, so I slept through the night. It's early morning. One thing I'd like to have you keep in mind, if you sleep in a bed and you've got food on the cooking station, it will calculate the amount of time passed, so you'll wake up to some charcoal. So let's keep that in mind. If you go to bed, don't have anything being cooked. Alright, so as we're exploring, as you can see, there are branches on the ground. That's what some of the wood looks like. But you may get real lucky and encounter some ruins, a pre-built structure. Sometimes there's bees and stuff in there. Don't touch them without a bow. It's a bad time. But you could also use that as your makeshift starting structure. As well, if you run along the beach line here, you'll notice this is where flint is coming from. The first few tool upgrades and worthwhile weapons come from flint. And this is what stone looks like. You can find it all over. So if you really want to cheese out some of these structures, you can throw down your crafting station there. And you can disassemble one of these ruins. Now while I'm showing you this, there's a bee's nest in there. This is how you can get a queen bee, which is a valuable resource, without having to get stung by the bees. There you go. So with the queen bee, it allows you to build a hive. You can get access to honey, which is a fantastic stamina food at this point in the game. And of course, this ruin has plenty of goodies for us. So that's currency related. That's a topic for another time. Alright, and finally, if you're having issues finding the materials in the ground, you can go into the graphics settings. You can turn the vegetation quality to low. This is a personal preference. If you feel this is cheating, of course, don't use it. But as you can see, it uglifies the game, but it's a lot easier to see the resources in the world, right? Such as the stones and the dandelions. And all of the useful things are significantly more visible. So the red mushrooms as well will be much easier to spot. So I think that's a good place to end. You've learned where the early resources come from. The best advice I can give you until I make another video is once you get a bow going and you're ready to actually hunt deer, make sure you do so. Hunt lots of deer. And all the stuff that they manage to drop for you, even the weird trophies that don't seem to do anything, hold on to them. You're going to need them. So, and of course, in your building menu here, as long as you're near your crafting table, you can make yourself a chest to store all of your worthwhile materials that you're gathering from the environment. But hopefully that's helpful. If you got some questions, you can throw them in the chat. If there's some stuff I should have covered, you know, throw it in there. Let me know. We can pin comments that are worthwhile, but just keep in mind the video stopping at the point where you're getting ready to hunt for deer. We'll go to the next level, like preparing for the aftermath of preparing for the first boss in probably the next video. But if this was helpful and you want to follow along, a like and a sub would be great. I'll talk to you all again real soon.